Hello and welcome to Yorkshire Voice on Wednesday the 1st of April. I'm Amy Monkman.
And I'm Daisy Couture. Here are today's top stories.
A Yorkshire bus company axes all services with less than 3 hours notice.
Why springtime may bring trouble for your pooch.
And a special egg is laid just in time for Easter.
But first, hundreds of passengers are facing disruption following the sudden announcement by a Yorkshire bus company that it has stopped operating. Yorkshire Buses gave its passengers less than 3 hours notice last night that it's pulling its services, blaming an increase in fuel costs.
The bus operator provided routes across West, South and North Yorkshire with direct routes to schools, hospitals and shopping centres. Joe Pinner is live for us now.
Apologies for the technical difficulties. A father from Halifax whose daughter died in a car crash involving 2 young drivers says the government must move faster to improve safety among newly qualified motorists. In this special report, Amy spoke to Dr. Ian Greenwood. Now a full-time campaigner, he's the first and only person in the UK to achieve a PhD in road safety policy.
Her injuries were awful. She's one of those kids that just had beautiful big blue eyes and just lit up a room. It is probably one of the most traumatic events that anybody experiences, the death of a 12-year-old child. Dads should not live beyond their 12-year-old child. It's wrong. There's just something not in life. It just feels, it's just the social injustice of it all, as well as the trauma of actually seeing your dead daughter. It's just awful, and it's the door that slams shut that you've described, Amy, that lots of people don't recover from.
Alice's life was cut short when a journey home from a day out with her mum and sister turned to tragedy. Their car was hit by teenage drivers racing down a country lane. Since then, Dr. Greenwood has campaigned for greater road safety for young people, specifically for graduated driving licences. According to One Road Safety Group, every day 5 people are killed on UK roads. Only 6% of drivers on our roads are aged 17 to 24, but they are involved in 24% of serious or fatal road collisions. Graduated driving licences aim to protect young drivers and other road users. They include a minimum learning period, restrictions on driving at night, limits on the number of other young passengers. In January, Northern Ireland became the first part of the UK to introduce graduate driving licences, and campaigners are hoping England will follow suit.
I campaign to save all lives. I start from the premise that people should be able to get out of bed in the morning, have the breakfast, go to work and get home in the evening. And far too many people, that is not the case. They either end up in a morgue or they end up seriously injured inside one of our intensive care units, or minor injuries, which are not quite as catastrophic, but even so has a big impact on my family, your family potentially, your neighbours, people at university, just anybody really. And they are very significant numbers. There's hundreds of thousands of people affected every single year. One of the big risk groups is young drivers.
There are thousands of bereaved families every year calling for change. As countries like New Zealand, Canada and now Northern Ireland lead the way, to date the Department of Transport has made no commitment to introduce a national graduate driving licences scheme for the rest of the UK. Dr. Greenwood has called this a major flaw in British policy making.
My life before that, I had a successful career, I was well, I had my health, I had 2 beautiful daughters. And then literally, just because of some stupidity, my life just altered. It's not natural to have a 12-year-old daughter killed suddenly, traumatically. I just wish she was here.
That was Dr. Ian Greenwood there finishing Amy's special report. Apologies for the technical difficulties earlier. Let's go back to Joe Pinner, who's going to tell us about a Yorkshire bus company who is pulling services and blaming it on an increase in fuel costs. Apologies for the technical difficulties again there.
Now, people suffering from ADHD often wait for a very long time before getting a diagnosis. Waiting list times in Leeds are currently at a record high.
The NHS has said that patients could be waiting over 10 years for an assessment due to the backlog. Tilly Wood reports.
Caitlin is one of 4,500 people in Leeds who is waiting for an ADHD diagnosis. She's been on the waiting list for a year.
I realised that from a young age I was always depicted as the person that was always like away with the fairies. You know, at parents' evening they'd always be telling me that I'm not focused enough, and the signs were already there, but I feel like because I was a girl no one really took much mind to it. When it comes to my uni work, I just feel like I'm a massive procrastinator. I leave things to the last minute, whereas everyone else seems to just get on with things just fine.
ADHD is a heavily misunderstood disorder, with many people not understanding its severity. Some of the worst symptoms include inability to organise, emotional dysregulation, and an increased risk of suicide. Stripes is a charity that works across West Yorkshire, offering support to those with or affected by ADHD. They believe that the government needs to be putting more money and recognition into neurodivergence and mental health.
So no waiting list should be 10 years long. You know, there might as well not be a waiting list, might there really? What I will say is it's not just Leeds. I know nationally waiting lists are far longer than they should be. We as a charity are working with Leeds as well, and we are aware there's lots of work going on behind the scenes. They are trying to put things in place to make things better, but that doesn't help anybody that's sat at the bottom of that waiting list at the moment. So as a charity, we basically support anybody in West Yorkshire who is affected in some way by ADHD, so whether that's someone with ADHD or suspected of, but also family members, so parents, carers, partners, whatever.
We asked the NHS Leeds Adult ADHD service to comment on these wait times. They said, "The waiting list has been increasing by around 170 referrals each month and is therefore unsustainable. We have decided to temporarily suspend accepting new referrals from the 11th of October 2024. Caitlin's wish is that the system changes so that girls like her can receive the support they need from an early age." Tilly Wood, Yorkshire Voice.
And Tilly, who is also waiting for a diagnosis, joins us now. Hi Tilly, what has your personal experience with ADHD been like?
Well, I never really thought about the fact that I could have ADHD until I was a teenager. I think, you know, the stereotype of ADHD is always just, you know, boys that are in school, they're loud, they're hyperactive. And when I found out the other symptoms, you know, more of the inattentiveness and things, I was like, that really resonates with me. But as far as the whole process of getting a diagnosis, it's been not very good at all. I've been waiting 3.5 years so far, so obviously that's really not ideal because it does impact my life quite a lot. I struggled quite a bit in college with organisation of deadlines and things. I struggle at work a lot of the time with the same kind of things, and I think it's really difficult because I think some of the symptoms that come along with ADHD I do think can come across as not caring, not they're having motivation, but people just don't understand that our brains just aren't wired in that way. Everything's a lot more difficult when you have got ADHD, but yeah, I do think it does affect my life quite a bit, and I would like a diagnosis.
And what does a diagnosis actually mean for someone who has ADHD?
Well, for me personally, I think it's the validation is the main reason that I'd like it, because I've always known there's something different about me. I've always known that, you know, I want to know what it is. So just having that label, I think some people don't like labels. I would love that label because I think a lot of people don't understand something until it's written down in front of them, until it's on a form. They've got that to put to your name. I think you get a lot more support, a lot more understanding. And I just think the stigma around being, you know, self-diagnosed, I just don't think it's very nice because a lot of people invalidate your struggles. A lot of people think that you're doing it for attention or, you know, you just want to be different. And ADHD really is hard. A diagnosis is nice to know that you're not alone. You know, up to 80% of people with ADHD also experience anxiety, depression, any kind of other mental health issues, as well as like your risk for substance abuse, a lot of other things. It all goes up, and it's just nice for people with ADHD to know that they're not alone, get a bit of support, be able to have a support network with other people.
And quickly, what would you say to other young people who are waiting for a diagnosis?
I'd definitely say that self-diagnosis isn't invalid when you've done your research. You know, you're waiting years and years to get a real diagnosis, and that doesn't make it appear you still had ADHD before or after. So I just think that support should be available. When you say you're experiencing symptoms, I think you should have resources, you should have people to help you out, because you're going to be waiting for years and years unsupported, like I've been, until you finally get that diagnosis.
And finally, what would you like to say to people who are waiting for that diagnosis, just quickly?
Well, I do think it's not their fault, absolutely. I think the NHS is damage control now from this point. I think it's got to a point now where it's ridiculously difficult to solve, but I just think maybe look out for charities like the one mentioned in the video. They can provide support, they can make you feel not alone, and yeah, there's always people out there that can help.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tilly. And now, in the run-up to Easter, the Dogs Trust are warning dog owners about ways to keep their pups safe this spring.
Treats such as chocolate, raisin hot cross buns and daffodil bulbs all pose a threat, potentially causing serious illness. Abby Johnson reports.
Spring is here, which means dog owners have to be especially careful of their dog's health.
So there's a few hazards around at springtime that we just want all dog owners to be aware of. So first one, which is happening right now, we've got lots of lovely daffodils, tulips, otherwise spring bulbs as a collective term, popping up in our parks and gardens. But I think a lot of people aren't aware that these plants are actually toxic to dogs.
While flowers may look harmless, these can actually cause serious issues for dogs in the long run.
These bulbs contain toxic compounds, an alkaloid that can cause tummy upset, but in high doses can cause more serious symptoms like seizures.
However, what is concerning is that not many dog owners are aware of the toxicity of spring bulbs.
Never knew about spring bulbs, daffodils, crocuses, things like that. I never knew about that.
I've never heard of that before. I've never heard of a dog's getting ill from being near daffodil or eating the bulb.
I've got 2 dogs myself, and as beautiful as they are, I'm always quite mindful about if I have any in the garden or if they sort of go sniffing around them in the park.
Hopefully once dog owners become aware of this, they will be able to keep their dogs safe this spring. Abby Johnson, Yorkshire Voice.
Now for the rest of the day's news, here's Rebecca Swales.
Thanks, Daisy. Last week, Yorkshire Voice reported on fly tipping that was blighting areas of Yorkshire. People in Manning and Bradford are determined to keep their area clean by bringing together companies and volunteers for a spring clean-up, aiming to make the area better. Today, the UK national living wage is rising for all ages. 16 to 17-year-olds will see an increase to £8. 18 to 20-year-olds will also have a pay rise, meaning full-timers could earn £1,000 more. And for those over 21, there's a 4.1% increase. However, businesses across Yorkshire are feeling the effect of rising business rates, which were also introduced today. Prices are rising for energy. From today, UK watchdog Ofgem is bringing in a £117 drop in the energy price cap for those paying by direct debit until the end of June. However, it only applies to households and not for businesses.
When we start to build, we have what is called a temporary supply to the site, which everything runs off that to start with. And we've noticed a significant increase in that over the last couple of months. Obviously, it increases slightly when you're building the houses, but it's definitely more expensive compared to what it has been in the last couple of years.
A telephone box at a hospital in Leeds has been given listed status. The red phone box at Seacroft Hospital is a K8 Mark II, the final generation of red phone boxes commissioned by the Post Office. It's been given Grade 2 listed status and protection. And that's all for the news wrap today. Now back to Amy and Daisy.
A 500-year-old medieval scroll that was discovered in a shoebox last year has gone on display. The rare find is part of an Easter exhibition in York. Daisy Couture reports.
A 500-year-old scroll that was discovered in a shoebox of all places has gone on display.
So the Arma Christi is a medieval prayer scroll. It's got a prayer poem on it known as the Vernacle, which takes the reader through the journey of Christ's journey to the cross. So from the kind of beginning point where he's on his way to the cross, right the way through to the crucifixion and his burial. And it's designed to kind of put that religious story into everyday life for medieval Christians.
The Arma Christi, which Dr. Thomason covered last year, is the only one of its kind currently on display. It depicts objects associated with the period before Jesus' death.
So there are only 10 other examples of this prayer scroll that survive, and none of them are on display currently, but none of them are on display permanently either. So this is the only place in the world where you can come and experience this amazing sort of everyday, this glimpse into everyday Christianity and everyday medieval life, which I think is pretty special, and we're very lucky to have it, to be able to look after it.
Serve God and this city better by becoming enclosed.
The Bar Convent is the oldest living convent in the UK. Its Easter exhibition has been organised around the Arma Christi, which can be viewed until mid-April. Daisy Couture, Yorkshire Voice.
Last Wednesday, we reported on the Wakefield Peregrine project, which provides a safe nesting spot for falcons to lay and hatch their eggs.
Since then, a surprise fourth egg has just been laid in time for Easter. Malcolm Ring reports.
Wakefield Cathedral is one of the chosen spots in Yorkshire where peregrine falcons come each year to lay and hatch their eggs. Since 2012, the Wakefield Peregrine project has been providing safe nesting spaces for these birds of prey. They've even set up a popular live stream that runs 24/7 on YouTube.
They're on a building that they like, but there isn't a suitable ledge for them on the building, and we've created the ledge. I know that peregrines at that time needed help, so I with one or two others, approached the cathedral and said, is it okay if we put a nesting platform on there to help the peregrines in their recovery? They share the duties. The female, who is a bit bigger than the male, does the night shift. She's obviously better suited to sitting there in the cold overnight than the male. But then in the daytime, the male he's as keen as mustard. He does some long shifts in the daytime, and they'll just swap over occasionally, and they'll incubate for about 34 days, something like that, just over a month.
Since speaking to Francis last week, a surprise fourth egg was laid in the clutch by the female. This means that the eggs are likely now to hatch around the 29th of April instead of the 25th.
We can usually tell when hatching's about to happen because you see the female looking curious. She starts looking down at the egg, and that's because she can hear the chick cheeping inside that egg.
Peregrine falcons used to be on the decline in the UK due to human persecution and the impact of pesticides in their food chain. But now, due to conservation projects like this, these birds are thriving in urban areas. Malcolm Ring, Yorkshire Voice.
Oh, I will definitely be checking in later this month to see if those eggs have hatched. Now here's Carolina with the weather.
Thank you. I'm here at the Hosford Hall Park near Leeds, where cherry blossom trees are expected to blossom in places like this in the coming weeks. But maybe not just yet, as today in Leeds we're seeing a mix of cloud and sunny spells, with temperatures reaching around 14 degrees. Across the region, Sheffield is also at 14 degrees, York close to 13, and Hull at around 12 degrees. Tomorrow we'll see a similar picture with around 12 degrees. That's all for the weather. Back to you in the studio.
That's all we have time for today. Thank you for joining us. If you want to keep up with all the news, be sure to tune in tomorrow at 4 o'clock.
You can also follow us on our social channels, and if you've got a story you think we'd be interested in, please get in touch. Until next time, goodbye.
Goodbye.